I did want to ask one more question for the panel before we close off here. Of course, Randy needing to dip out, but this question is in regard to the Celtics opponent tonight, and it's really not about the Utah Jazz. We're not going to talk about. We could talk a little bit about the main Celtics at the end, but I'm
No,
going to
I was
phrase
saying
this question first.
Mykhailiuk.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Svi and Jaden Springer, of course, on the
Got
Utah
that.
Jazz.
Yeah.
But looking at the Jazz, right? Looking at the bottom of the standings. Now, the Boston Celtics and the Jazz, they gave the Jazz their 50th loss of the season tonight. So the Jazz 15-50 on the year. That is the second worst record in the league, just behind the Washington Wizards, who are 13-50 on the season. But the Utah Jazz will certainly be in the running for one Mr. Cooper Flagg
Oh,
this
Cooper
summer
Flagg.
in
I'm
June.
from Maine, so that's a
Yes.
big thing from me.
Yes.
Yep.
Home state kid for yourself and Cooper Flagg. But the Celtics faced a team who could very well harbor Cooper Flagg the next time the Boston Celtics face the Jazz next season. They'll actually face the Jazz one more time this season, but next season, the Utah Jazz could have Cooper Flagg on their roster. But looking at the bottom of the NBA standings right now, the draft lottery reads as such. And again, draft lottery, this is just based on the records right now. There will be a whole ping pong ball selection in May, and we'll actually see who wins. The lottery wins the number one pick overall. But right now, as the records stand, with about 20 games to go in the season, the team with the best odds to land the number one overall pick, the Washington Wizards, 13-50 on the year. Already mentioned them. But number two, the Utah Jazz. Number three, Charlotte Hornets in the Eastern Conference, the second worst team in the Eastern Conference. Then we go to the second worst team in the West, the New Orleans Pelicans, with the fourth best odds at the number one overall pick. Toronto, number five. Philadelphia, number six. Very, very big for Philadelphia to stay in that number six spot in the draft and not fall down, because if they do, they owe Oklahoma City and the Thunder their pick. The Sixers owe that pick to the Thunder from the Al Horford trade, trying to get rid of Al Horford's contract. The Sixers gave that pick to the Oklahoma City Thunder. So the Sixers, if it falls top six, the Sixers get to keep the pick. But if it's outside of the top six, it'll be the Thunders. But right now, the Sixers are in sixth and actually tied with the Brooklyn Nets for sixth. Eighth is the San Antonio Spurs. Ninth, the Chicago Bulls. 10th, the Portland Trailblazers. 11th, the Miami Heat. 12th, the Phoenix
What?
Phoenix Suns. No, you'll see why I said this. Phoenix, they'll be trading their pick to the Houston Rockets, so they're in
Oh,
that
okay.
slot.
All right. There you
The
go.
Phoenix Rockets. I was like, wait a minute, hold up.
That
The
might be.
Dallas Mavericks own the 13th best odds at the number one overall pick, and then it's the Kings at 14, but the Kings pick belongs to the Atlanta Hawks. But looking at specifically the top five, the Wizards, the Jazz, the Hornets, the Pelicans, and the Raptors. You could even throw the Sixers and the Nets in there at number six as well. Out of all the teams in the lottery, specifically the teams at the top, the teams most likely to land Cooper Flagg, which of the 14 teams? Yes, 14 teams. Which of the 14 lottery teams own the best fit for Cooper Flagg coming into the league? Griffin, we'll
Wait,
let you go first on this one.
did you mention Brooklyn?
Yes, and number
Okay.
six.
Okay.
They're seventh/sixth right now. They're jockeying with Philadelphia. And I'll disclaim this too about the standings at the bottom is really they change every single day. I mean, a team wins a game, loses a game. They change every single day. I think earlier today the Bulls were at 7. Right now, I think I just read them at 9. So it changes every single day. But out of the lottery teams, who's the best fit for Cooper Flagg?
Okay. So you guys want to hear something really cool? I went to high school a half hour away from where Cooper Flagg went to high school, and my school would face him in sports. When he and I've heard going to college, I've heard so many stories of people who played with Cooper and like 1v1 him and stuff. So and that's just a background about Maine and kind of being the hometown hero. But I don't. This is where we come into will he have another year at Duke? Because it makes you wonder because he doesn't want to play for the Wizards. You know he doesn't. No, who really wants to play for the Wizards? I'm being honest. I'm saying Brooklyn. Now I'm saying Brooklyn because the reason I didn't like the Nets was because they made this unrealistic super team getting James Harden, Kyrie, and Durant. That's why I didn't like them. But as soon as they lost them and they had some young talent, I was like, all right, I'll be on board with them. So I like Cooper Flag there. I think the Pelicans would be fine. The Raptors, maybe that would be kind of a good place for him. But I don't wanna see him with the Wizards or the Jazz, but Cooper, you get a lot from Cooper. You guys know that. You guys see what he's doing there, and I could go on a rant about Cooper for an hour and a half. I totally could, but great talent, and, do you guys think the kind of add-on question too, do you guys think that he runs it back and does another year, or do you think he goes straight to the NBA?
I
Too
mean,
much money resides in the NBA right now.
Yeah,
Too much
but
money.
is he
About the
willing.
second contract. It's not. It's about the second contract. The first contract, you can make a deal with yourself and go, okay, I get 10 million on my first NBA deal if I'm the number one overall pick. Which right now it's probably got to be like 14 million almost for the number one overall
I think
pick.
it's around 13 or something like that.
13,
But
14, yeah, somewhere around
do
there.
you think
But
he's willing to, like, be
you,
like, "Alright, I don't
yeah,
wanna do that if I go to the, Wizards." Like, I
you could
money.
rationalize like, okay, yeah, I can make this amount of money in college, but at the same time, it's about the second contract in the NBA. It's about really getting to that second deal, really getting the years under your belt towards that second year deal as soon as possible, because that second rookie max extension, or rather the rookie max extension, the second contract a player receives in the league, that can be over $200 million, if not more, as we see in the years go by here in the future when Cooper Flag eventually gets there. It's going to be a lot more than what it is now. And I think that's a huge factor when it comes to players playing in the league. They want to get to that second contract. They don't want to waste some of their talent and maybe spheres of play that, this kind of sounds bad for college basketball, but spheres of play that might not matter and might not get them paid as much within their whole legacy and their time playing the game of basketball. So I think Cooper Flag, I think he's going to be in the NBA next year. I
yeah.
think that's for certain. Go
Can
ahead,
I
Frank.
really quick, can I add
Go ahead,
something?
Frank.
Just really quick
Yeah.
too. But he's also super young. He just turned 18. And, add-on question too for Franco. Do you guys just kick in some Celtics, do you guys ever see him with the Celtics before his career's over? I just wanna add that in too.
If the Celtics
Yes.
could pull off that, like, I mean, we got to look at the
Free agent.
CBA for the Boston Celtics going forward. I don't think we can see the Celtics really making a move to add anything more talented than they have on this roster until 2030. Like, the guys that you got right now and the guys that you have developing in the G League on the back end of your roster, those are the guys you're going to have to be relying on in like 2027, 2028, and even nearing around 2030 when the only players left on contract are Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. It's going to be that would be ridiculously challenging. Who knows? Maybe he could be the veteran. He could be the veteran mentor for Deuce Tatum when he comes into the NBA.
Yeah.
I really think
Like that's like the most hypothetical logistical BS I could spew. But I'll give to return back to the question for where is the best fit for Cooper Flag. I'll take this opportunity on the Jazz post game show to give the Utah Jazz somewhat of their credibility. Do you know how badly Danny Ainge probably wants Cooper Flag on the Utah Jazz? Him being a Boston scout obviously probably has an ear to Scalabrini, who has done a lot of work with him with the White Mamba Academy. Also, hearing all the other routes that he has to New England, I feel like the Utah Jazz are sprawling for a player of his caliber because you they've brought in two players, but they haven't really had that homegrown talent since Donovan Mitchell when he left this team in a few years back. But they bring in players like Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen, who are still younger players, still have a few years left of their careers. Some would say they're nearing or are in their prime. So I think that you could, I would say the best chance for Cooper Flagg to perform at uh, his top performance level would be with a team like the Utah Jazz, because you look at any of these other teams, Alexander Sarr with the Washington Wizards, the number one pick from, or the second pick from last year. He's kind of just been riding around with the Washington Wizards, and the Washington Wizards don't seem to have any sense of direction with where they're going. I mean, they have the 2021-2022 Boston Celtics bench backcourt on their team right now with Marcus Smart and Malcolm Brogdon coming off the bench for them, which
It's pretty funny. That's true.
it's it's my as we like to say, mind-boggling to me that how their roster is constructed. It makes me scratch my head when I look at the way they built their team, how they completely dismantled the Kuzma pool ideal going on, and you really haven't been able to get those star contributions from your younger players. So I think Washington is a very would be a very risky team for him to go to. But once again, there's a lot of teams that he could have a genuine impact on and lead to positive. And obviously, you don't want to be drafted to a team who's not going to be very good. But there's a reason why every single team in the NBA draft has the number one draft pick at some point.
Yeah, really looking at all the teams who could potentially land Cooper Flag, I really think the team the Celtics face tonight actually might be the most competent of all the squads at the bottom who could potentially land Cooper Flag. I think the Utah Jazz, number one, they have a relatively new owner in the NBA, Ryan Smith, who has really proven to be a competent owner in the Utah space, the Salt Lake City space, really with the arena, the hockey club as well, playing in the arena. But the Utah Jazz, they seem like a well-ran organization from an ownership perspective, but not only that, from a front office perspective, we know they have one of the best minds in NBA basketball and one of the best GMs in NBA basketball, in Danny Ainge. With his time with the Celtics was one of the best GMs in all of basketball, and he's done a fairly good job with this Jazz team as well. And you notice he's in a lot of the deals we see out there at the trade deadline, or even ahead of the trade deadline in the offseason. Danny Ainge is always getting his hands on extra picks, extra players, rerouting. You know, he's the third team, the fourth team in some deals, and he really understands the game of dealing out there with other teams and really building an NBA roster ready to make a championship run. And so for me, I look at it and go, well, competent front office, competent ownership in Utah, and also they kind of understand their direction as well, which right now the team has no direction, but that is the direction for the Utah Jazz. It's for them to lose ball games. They understand right now this is an era in which we want to lose in order to attain a player of Cooper Flag status. And the Utah Jazz will have a very good chance as they are second overall right now in the draft lottery. Some of the other teams, though, I'm a little afraid if Cooper Flag goes to these teams, they'll be relying a little bit too hard on Cooper Flag to turn around their entire organization when there's no substance within their organization to turn around. I mean, the Washington Wizards, you already said it, Franco. There seems to be no sense of direction there whatsoever. You have Chris Middleton on the roster, Marcus Smart, Malcolm Brogdon. You have some veteran help, but your young guys aren't developed whatsoever if you're the Washington Wizards. Koulibaly, Alexander Sarr is sitting there. Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma. Obviously, Kuzma's gone, but that whole ordeal was just a head scratcher and very confusing for the Washington Wizards to go through. And it was really for losing, but they haven't reaped too much from the losing so far. But the Wizards, their young core, even thinking about Bub Carrington from this past year, they're just a core that's not quite developed, and they don't really have a direction of where they want to go when they want to go there. The Charlotte Hornets, they've been just in a perpetual rebuilding state. I think that's a team that you could look out and go, okay, if Cooper Flagg enters that roster, you have LaMelo Ball there, you have Brandon Miller, you still have Miles Bridges, and how about this? You have Mark Williams as well, a highly sought after player by the Lakers at one point. But that Hornets roster all of a sudden starts looking a little bit more formidable out of the East second tier. But that Hornets roster, the thing that concerns me is there's no culture within that building. Now, Charles Lee, first year head coach there from the Boston Celtics, of course, was with the Celtics staff last year. He's there in Charlotte trying to muster up wins with those guys, but I don't see that culture in Charlotte, and I don't see that trajectory with that team. I think there's a lot of questions surrounding some of the leaders of that team. LaMelo Ball, Brandon Miller, they don't really strike me as leaders. Is Cooper Flagg going to be able to come in and lead right away? I think it's more likely than not that LaMelo would request a trade potentially out of Charlotte before Cooper Flagg ever really became that leader with the Charlotte Hornets. And I'm not sure about Cooper Flagg's fit there, although it would start to kind of muster up a talented roster. New Orleans is just all over the place. I think they could end up being one of the more talented rosters if they landed Cooper Flagg, but we all know New Orleans, they've just fumbled the bag time and time again. I mean, think about they had Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday on the same roster. They were nowhere near contention with those guys. I mean, they made the second round once. Congrats. They beat the Portland Trailblazers in round one, then were waxed by the Golden State Warriors the next round. But that was a long time ago. Fumbled that era with Anthony Davis and Drew Holiday. And then the next era where they see all these great goodies from the Los Angeles Lakers who are competing with nobody yet gave the New Orleans Pelicans this treasure chest of awesome assets from Josh Hart, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, DeAndre Hunter as a pick that turned into Dyson Daniels, and gave all of those assets to the New Orleans Pelicans. What did the Pelicans do to them? I mean, they basically pissed all over them and pissed them away because New Orleans Pelicans, they're fourth, they're their fourth worst record right now in the NBA, and they made terrible trade after terrible trade, terrible move, letting guys walk, and they haven't given the money to the right players. I mean, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, two of their more max guys, and Brandon Ingram's actually on the next team I'm going to face, or the next team that I'm going to put out here. But in terms of the Pelicans, who they paid, which assets they've kept, which assets they traded away, they've never been able to build a legitimate contending roster around what they have. And looking at where the Pelicans are now, they're just in the middle of a mess. So to send Cooper Flagg there, I mean, we've seen it with a guy like Zion, even DeMarcus Cousins. DeMarcus Cousins is one of the most outspoken guys on New Orleans, and the aspect of the New Orleans Pelicans, the scenario of where they actually are in New Orleans. I mean, their arena is right next to the Superdome. The Pelicans are owned by the same family who owns the New Orleans Saints. And you definitely play little brother to the Saints in the city of New Orleans if you're the New Orleans Pelicans. So that's also a reason why Cooper Flagg might not be great.
Can I add something on there?
Go ahead.
When you're getting, they compare him to Kevin Garnett. When you're getting Kevin Garnett talent on your team, and you see how much of a leader he is at Duke, and you just see his aggressiveness, and he's kind of bringing back that trash talking basketball, kind of similar to Anthony Edwards, and you see him kind of that star player. You don't want him, like you're listing off, you don't want him to go to these places where it looks like a dumpster fire, like with Washington, what they're doing there. You traded your younger players and like, you want him to go somewhere where he's going to be successful and there's going to be success down the line. Sorry, I just needed to add that in because like I said, I'm a big Cooper guy because he lived 30 minutes for me, and all like we'll have to this off season on Celtics Nation Rise. Let's all get on a podcast and let's have a Cooper Flagg podcast. I'm saying it, just one episode.
We'll send you a
we got to do draft, and we got to do summer league for Cooper Flagg too.
We do, because you could go on for hours and hours about this guy. He's like, I know how much hype there was around Wemby, but this is also a player who's from the United States, from Maine, in like so close to Boston, and that's why I was kind of asking you guys the question, like, do you guys see him someday? Like, because he's going to be a free agent someday, maybe be that hero and come to Boston, because I don't know if he said it or some. Yeah, I think he said, who doesn't want to play for their hometown team? Like, I don't know. I'm just so big on Cooper, and you guys, I don't know how much you hear, especially you, Seamus, but like I hear every day. I hear Cooper Flagg, and it's just because look where he's from, and his brother Ace. I don't know if you guys heard much about Ace Flagg. He's going to UMaine. He's going to be some person that we're later on down the road talking about in the NBA draft. Obviously, nowhere near as good as Cooper Flagg, but we'll talk about him someday. I guarantee it. We'll be on here chatting about, oh, Ace Flagg, where is he gonna go? Yeah, sorry. Sorry. There's my Cooper Flagg rant. Told you I'd go for hours for him.
I could see Cooper Flagg, hometown team one day, but it would have to be 7, 8, 9 years
Yeah.
from
Oh,
now.
way
And,
down
and,
the road.
and that's where you see it as there is some plausibility to that because in a decade, you don't know what Tatum and Brown are going to be doing, where they're going to be, if they're going to still be playing basketball. And you don't know how Cooper Flagg, how his career is going to play out. He could go to New Orleans, like I was just talking about, absolutely hate it there. I want to come back to the Northeast. So I could definitely see Cooper Flagg in a Celtics uniform, although it would have to be quite a while, quite a ways away.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. 100% because the thing about with Cooper is like I think that's why you're speculating hearing him being like, all right, I'll be down to run it back one more year. I think you're hearing that because obviously you think about it. You think about the draft and you want to go to a team where there's success. But if the Wizards get it, he knows what's going on in Washington. And you have so many NBA players in his phone. You have Scal, who's the biggest person in his contact, literally brought him to Boston, like made Cooper Flagg known, Brian Scalabrine. So you have all these guys in there. They're like, all right, you don't want to go there. You maybe. So that's why. And his parents are smart. His parents are super smart. I don't know if you guys heard a lot about them, but super. He has a super smart family, and they're just trying to set him up for success. And that's why they're like, I mean, you guys have to think too. He was 17 in December. Like he was 17, not even classified as an adult, 18 just in December. He was 17 in college. So that's why I kind of be like, all right, listen, it's concerning because you want to get right into the NBA, but he's still so young and like he's nowhere near where he could be with basketball. I just had to throw that in there too.
I think we gotta get you to. We'll do like a little research project. Send you into his hometown. Maybe see if we can
I'm
find some of his buddies. See if we can hang out with some of his guys that he used to shoot at the rec hoops with.
you
And
guys.
that
It's
would be some good project for the summer. And who knows? There's another team. Oh, actually, no. They don't even have the. Do they still have that chance for Cooper Flagg? The next team coming up on our lineup, the Oklahoma City Thunder, or does that still go to the 76ers? Because I remember seeing a whole bunch of posts about that the Thunder could somehow walk away with the ping pong ball of Cooper Flagg.
or the Spurs with Wemby going down. I'm saying you heard all the rumors with like Tim Duncan and all of them. So I'm saying maybe the Spurs. And definitely, I talk to so many people. There's so many people I go to college with that know Cooper Flagg, played basketball with him, have him on their phone still too. Like he's definitely an important role in their life. And like I said, I'm close. I'm actually not too far from his hometown. So yeah, 100%. Oh, it looks like Seamus is frozen. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I could ramble on a little more about Cooper Flagg if you want. So it's actually funny. I heard a story about him, how he I'll say this story while we're waiting for Seamus. So I guess he played pickup basketball, right? Oh, Seamus, I'm telling you, Cooper
Well,
Flagg
this is what happens when you're 2.5 hours into a post game. Your camera dies. So
I know I started getting into a Cooper Flagg story because we were like, where did Seamus go?
all right. Well, I'm here. I'm on the iPad right now.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, that iPad. All right,
Gotta pull out the iPad.
I'll give it to you quick. So I heard he was playing against some UMaine guys, and they were talking smack about him. And I heard he was giving it right back. and he beat those UMaine guys when he was like, I think 13 or 14 years old, like grown college kids. He smacked them up in basketball. So that just shows his like attitude and kind of his willingness and just wanting to succeed above everyone.
Yeah, I think if you really look at all the teams that Cooper Flagg could go to, we were talking about really the next team I was going to talk about is the Raptors. I mean, I don't know what's going on there. Emmanuel Quickly, Brandon Ingram, Scotty Barnes, they're top 3 highest paid players right now. I think if Cooper Flagg went there, it'd just be a total mistake. But after that, you have the Sixers. I mean, hey, that would be a turnaround from the Sixers having a
Oh,
putrid
that would be
season.
huge for the Sun or the.
I mean, they would have a rising star on a great contract compared to their terrible, awful, no good deals right now in Joel Embiid and Paul George. That would definitely boost some Sixers statuses the next couple of seasons. But if the Sixers, they don't fall within that top 6, could go to a team like the Nets. The Nets are really just bare bones right now with what they have. That'd be
Okay,
a bare bones team.
You can
but
build
think
what.
But think about it, though. Think about this. I see him in the jersey for one, and that's a team I could see him having a lot of success with and building something there. That I'm just saying that because they're just you think about their talent and what they have. They don't have much, so they're just gonna keep getting picks and they're gonna keep building. They're kind of gonna be like an OKC team. I think they will.
I think that could happen with the Brooklyn Nets, considering the picks they have, and really they still have some young talent on their roster. Plus, I would say the Northeast superstar, the Northeast what should be the rising star in Cooper Flagg comes back to the Northeast. It's kind of an interesting conversation whether some guys want to return home or they don't, because some guys actually don't like to return home. Like Kevin Durant, he's always said, "Oh, I don't want to go back to DC. I've been around DC my entire life. I've had to move a million different places in DC," and that's why he ultimately, well, he was drafted by Seattle, completely different place. They moved to Oklahoma City, but then after that, played with the Golden State Warriors, played with the Brooklyn Nets, didn't quite come home to DC as we've seen out in Phoenix right now. But I always find it fascinating whether a player actually wants to go back home or whether they actually want to go somewhere else. That's going to be the question with Cooper Flagg. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they're probably not going to land Cooper Flagg because they are, if the 76ers, if they land the 76ers pick, the 76ers pick will have to be 7 through 30. And that's only if Cooper Flagg falls down to 7. I highly doubt that's going to happen.